And we are live.
Yes.
It is the Café Hangout. I'm John Pollock, joined as always by Wai Ting, but we have a third chair occupied for the entire show, Damian Abraham.
Shit.
And we have a fourth voice that is joining us
Sorry.
from Wai's laptop as well. Damian Abraham, host of The Wrestlers on Viceland, here and in living color.
Oh, it's an honor to be here. Anytime I get to hang out in the Hangout is a great day for me.
Well, I feel that, look at this, with a Chris Wolf shirt. You themed out your attire for today because we're going to be chatting about the Stardom episode that aired on Wednesday night.
Yep.
And lots to discuss. We're going to be going through all the news. And this is also a chance. We've been doing these segments with Damian, but this is a rare chance to do it live, that we'll be able to take calls for Damian as well. So if you do want to call in throughout the show, we will be opening up the Café Hangout phone line. So you can give us a call at 732-800-4423, or you can Skype in. Just search for Post Wrestling. We'll be taking your phone calls, Skype calls, and it is the start of a very, very busy weekend going on. Are you going to be able to catch anything this weekend, Damian?
A little bit.
Where first of all, where are you off to?
I'm going to Portugal right after we get off this conversation. I'm flying to Portugal for 20 hours.
Wow.
Coming back.
What's in Portugal?
I'm playing Primavera Sound, which is a Spanish festival, but a couple years ago they started running a sort of adjacent festival in Porto. So we're playing, and then Interpol's playing right after.
No way.
Yeah.
Holy shit. I wish I could be there.
I popped away.
Sorry.
You should go.
I love fucked up, but man, Interpol.
No, that was the
Man,
only,
my
like,
man.
it's rare. There's a couple bands I've stumbled on over the years that I can pop away with, but
But we're not here to talk.
No, we're not.
Talk about turn on the bright lights. We are here to talk about.
No, I wanted to go through a few news items
Sure,
first.
okay.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
Of course, Damian can pop in with us. I guess kind of the most interesting story going into the Super Showdown card on Friday is the fact that Natalya, Alexa Bliss, and Renee Young are all there.
Mhm.
Ryan Satin had reported that the WWE had been attempting for a long time to be putting together a match for this show, and it seems that as of right now, it's up in the air if the match will actually happen. But Natalya and Alexa Bliss are, in essence, there on standby if they are called upon to be able to do a match on Friday or not. And with Renee Young being part of the Crown Jewel broadcast, she's obviously going to be doing Friday's show. It seems that now it is just a question of when, not if, that there is going to be a women's match, which is a departure from the reaction that the Greatest Royal Rumble received when they aired the ad featuring Sasha Banks and Carmella. And there was a lot of outrage over that. Damian, I just want to kind of get your thoughts on just what this show represents, the WWE's involvement in it, and how you kind of look at the third show, because there was certainly, I think, a lot of anger towards the Crown Jewel and in such close proximity to the murder of Jamal Khashoggi.
Mm-hmm.
How do you just feel about what the show is on Friday?
well, I think we've talked about it before, even that they're just going to try and wear people down. They're going to try and wear out the outrage and just kind of keep going back. And they've made it pretty clear that any response is going to be met with them continuing to run shows there. And, their great PR victory will be them being allowed to have this women's match on the show. But that's almost like,
it's an easy defense to be able to put this up as like, here is your change. And I think it can deflect from a lot of other issues that I hope people are still focused upon.
Yeah, no, if they get this will be their moral victory, and they'll be able to, waive this one when people fire any critiques about any of the other issues that are around them running a show there right now. But there's also, I think people could answer back, like, people are like, oh, they're running a show there that's going to be, Saudi propaganda, but it's like they also run shows consistently that are, American propaganda as well. So, they'll go where the money is. I think they've made that abundantly clear as a company.
Wait, do you expect that to be reintroduced on the show on Friday? Kind of the more like the political messaging that we got in the first show that was absent Crown Jewel?
I do not personally. I don't think you'll see the level of, this is a great for, okay. If they have a women's match going on, I think it totally changes maybe what that show looks like. I think you will see a lot of messaging in regards to that, championing that as sort of, the social change that they're helping implement. I don't think though you'll be seeing like videos talking about, MBS or anything like that on this show. I still think it's pretty deep in hot water right now, the subject.
I think it's going to be interesting if we do or not. Like, ultimately, like there's a reason they are spending so much money on this. Like this is very much like a promotional machine. That's what the WWE
Probably
is
part of the argument
agreeing to be.
for them to put women on, you know, is the ability for them to be able to spread this message that Saudi Arabia is a changed place.
Yeah. I think it's going to be very interesting how we look back. That I have a lot of respect for people that are not on this show by their own decision, like a Bryan Danielson, the circumstances of which Kevin Owens is not going on to this for this trip. That I think it's very easy if you're a performer that you can rationalize this decision and maybe not even put much thought into it. It's another show. It's a nice payday. And I can justify it by just saying it's my job. That here are two people that they are actively walking away from doing a show like this. And it could be, I don't think they'd receive any criticism for doing the show. I don't think that the performers necessarily are kind of put in that light, but they were two that made this very strong statement, even if they're not going to talk about it publicly.
Do you feel like more would do it if they had the option to? You know what I mean? Like, how do we know how many people willingly are like Kevin Owens and Daniel Bryan, I suppose, maybe have a certain level of say. I don't know, but you know, like let's say
I don't think it's a situation where people are mandated to do this show, but I think it's implied like anything that do I want to be the one to say I'm not doing this show and what repercussions come with that? I mean, we look at, you know, when Rob Van Dam didn't want to go to Iraq that one year for one of the tribute to the troops. It's like, is there they may say that's absolutely, you're right. No one is forced to go, but do you, if you're lower on the card, if you were, I mean, pick out a name that maybe is not of a certain level. But again, I think that a lot of talent would live with kind of that worry about what is this, don't rock the boat. And these guys, regardless of their positions, they're choosing to put their beliefs ahead of what could be just another payday, and a very good one at that.
Well, I think also the difference is when Rob Van Dam said he didn't want to go, it's like, well, where are you going to go? Like TNA? And now there's other options, you know, like for these guys, they have a little bit more leverage in these situations now. They could be like, well, yeah, we're okay. Yeah, you're going to try and force me to go. I'm not going to go. And then I'm going to leave. And then what are you going to do? So I think they're going to be just fine.
If we do get a women's match on Friday, subsequent Saudi Arabia shows, do you think we will start to see them look more like regular WWE shows?
It depends how it's received in the country. You know, I think it depends how that's received. I don't think that's totally out of WWE's hands.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as though it's a case where female entertainers have not gone to that country and performed, but we also saw what the reaction was like just for an ad playing last year.
So now that might be because of certain, you know, what Carmella was wearing as a part of that ad.
Yeah.
Now, no doubt, if Natalya and Alexa Bliss wrestle, they will probably be wearing similar outfits to what Sasha and Alexa wore in the match in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
If that is the issue, you know, could we still see, you know, a card filled with half women's talent, the entire women's roster, but with different outfits for next shows?
I think that would probably be the compromise. Do you think differently, Damian?
Oh, I think it just depends, like what the reaction is from the kingdom. You know, like if they get a letter condemning it the next day,
well, certainly they have to approve it in order for this to take.
Yeah, but even last time wasn't there like, or maybe it was after the first show. Remember afterwards there was like letters of condemnation. Maybe it was because of the ad that ran, but there was like this whole thing that was, you know, and I think
the ad did not run with their approval.
No, and I think I don't know. It depends how it's received within the country. You know, like I think that would be. It's one thing to have, you know, like a performer go there who's a woman and sing. It's going to be another thing how it's received when they're actually like engaged in a wrestling match.
I'm actually surprised that there is not more attention on the Sami Zayn story. That to me is one that at some time you would assume that he's going to eventually talk about this, whether it's years down the road. And I just think that it's just such an awful decision that's been made. And it's when the WWE was actually asked about this last year, and they gave like this very vague statement, not confirming it, but pretty much stating that we are going to respect local customs and, you know, in essence, that like not denying it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And he was injured the last show. He's not on this show, not expected to be on this show. And I just think that's man, I think it's a really hard one to rationalize if you're WWE and not expect it to one day kind of be a bigger story than it appears to be right now.
Should be a big story, but I guess in the context of Saudi Arabia's offenses, it's so low on the list, right? Like, I mean, not
but ones that WWE, it's like,
yes, of course,
is ultimately compromising their own thoughts on their own beliefs in order to make this deal as smooth as
if
possible.
they're willing to shut out the entire women's roster, I mean, I don't believe they'd have any issue shutting out one guy of Syrian descent, as shitty as that sounds. And that's kind of the thing with this story. Even if Alexa and Natalya are able to perform, I mean, it's obviously still just one thing amongst like a whole litany of probably far worse offenses.
Well, that's where I look at this being kind of deflective of this, like in a very cold and calculated way. It is a very smart move to make, because I think it's going to take a lot of the attention away from all the other things that you can dig a little deeper and understand those issues, because now we have something to point to that's going to silence a lot of people and give a defense for those that want to defend now.
Well, maybe that'll be next year's gimmick, like we can allow Sami Zayn to wrestle this year. Yeah. And after that, it's like Finn Balor can wear his shirt,
I think I also want to say that Sami Zayn did announce yesterday that he is increasing returning once again to Sam's_USA to launch a mobile clinic in Syria. So I guess that is his response, maybe in a way, is that he's once again renewing his commitment to help people that are being hurt in a very, very tragic conflict right now. So
yeah, it's a difficult situation, I'm sure, for him to be a part of.
I mean, he's a guy that has years on his deal, and I think it's something that it's just unfortunate. Here's a guy that is told you are not allowed to do your job today through absolutely no fault of your own. It's you happen to be born with this ancestry, and I think that's just
it's messed up.
It really blows my mind.
Yeah, and I will say that one of the most incredible, unique people I've ever met in wrestling. Like, just like the way he looks at the world, you can tell that this must be destroying him, that he can't really talk about it.
Do you know when he might have resigned?
He signed last year, right around his injury, and he's under for, I want to say, 3 years.
Now,
from last year.
Do you find it interesting that despite maybe going through this last year, that he decided to resign?
I was surprised.
I think it's I can't remember the exact month that he signed, but it is an interesting one. It was also around the same time last year Kevin Owens signed, and he signed a 5-year deal. So it's like both of those two are like locked in. But yeah, you knew that. I don't know how much.
We're also talking about a landscape where AEW did not yet exist.
Well, that's what it. But the idea of AEW, like, you could see it kind of forming at that point. But like, Owens did not surprise me at all. Like, I think like this is where this guy wants to be ultimately. I don't know Zayn enough to really be able to guess if that's something that would have been on his mind. But you also have to remember that, like, how many ideas of these landscaping changing promotions have come around versus WWE that I know it's going to be here. And for many people, like, that is the peak of where they want to be. They don't want to go to Japan. They don't want to be back. Like, Kevin Owens did not want to be on the independent scene by the end when he finally got signed.
Well, even for something like Sammy for Syria, you're going to have the biggest stage if you're associated with the WWE, for better or for worse. So.
Yeah, and I will. I wouldn't be surprised if one day he decides to leave, because he definitely seems like someone who really enjoys traveling, really enjoys just waking up in a different place every day. And I could see him going back and doing the indies again, like, not ever talking to him about it or anything.
Yeah, you could have Moxley, Juice Robinson, and Sami Zayn, like the anti-social media like faction beyond just a tag team. I mean, we could have a whole faction now. Did you get to follow any of the Best of the Super Junior stuff the other day?
A little bit.
Moxley's debut and Ospreay's win.
Yeah, I watched that on the old New Japan Network and stuff, and I think it's amazing to watch him back there. Like, this is, I think, what we all thought it was going to be like when Moxley showed up in the WWE, and instead we got the Shield, which, like, I guess
cool.
We remembered fondly, but this is not what he is. Like, he was the guy that was in CZW with power tools on people's heads. Like, this is a guy who has, all the like that's what I want. He has this edge,
Did he have a screener of your deathmatch episode that's airing next week? Maybe he got some.
Maybe a future subject.
I've never met him. I would love to meet him. He's one of those people that I'm really fascinated by to see like what's he like.
I'll tell you what he's like in real life. Go watch that YouTube clip of him doing Dusty and Terry Funk, where he's doing dialogue from a movie as those two, and it is like I watch that thing once a month. It's like my favorite John Moxley clip. It's fantastic. Just looking here, this is the updated lineup for the card on Friday. We're not going to be doing our typical preview here, but we'll list the matches here. We do have Triple H and Randy Orton, 55 years in the making, a 50-man battle royal, which the aesthetics of which I'm very curious by. Bill Goldberg versus The Undertaker, Braun Strowman versus Bobby Lashley, Finn Balor versus Andrade for the Intercontinental title, Roman Reigns versus Shane McMahon, Kofi Kingston versus Dolph Ziggler for the WWE title, Seth Rollins, Baron Corbin with a likely involvement of Brock Lesnar for the Universal title, Lars Sullivan against the Lucha House Party, and on the kickoff show, we're finally getting the Usos versus the Revival.
All right. It's a show.
That is your card.
show.
That is it. You will be busy in Portugal, and I guess will not be tuning into the Super Showdown.
Yeah, but I've got PVR and I'll watch when I come back.
I wonder how long this show is going to be. It's listed from like 2. Well, the kickoff is at 1, and then the main show is listed from 2 till 6.
Even when you read through the card, it felt long.
It's 10 matches.
Really, I would say the only interesting thing from like fans' perspective, if I have to look at the show like that, is Goldberg versus Undertaker. I think there's still, two protected, characters in the company. I'm most interested to see how long it goes, how long that match goes.
Yeah, like if it's more of a morbid curiosity than a. I'm really excited to see this.
Good though, if they keep it short, like if they keep it to both men's strengths.
Yeah, they
entrances. Finishing moves. Done.
I'm thinking these two guys just got off a plane. These two guys haven't been wrestling that much recently, as far as we know. Maybe they've been constantly training.
This is Taker's first match since the last Saudi Arabia card.
Yeah, I'll take a bet.
Will it be as good or better than WrestleMania?
I would
equal to or exceeding WrestleMania.
Let's talk about what a weird tagline. Like you could tell that's from the Vince direction, right? And they've seemed to have
not even promoting it. It'll be better than WrestleMania. It will be either equal to or it will exceed. Like we're giving ourselves a range.
How awkward, and why the need to be that specific about how good it is?
Because they're just hedging their bets. They don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. It's
all from Michael Cole at the end. Whatever the closing shot is, that it exceeded WrestleMania.
It was equal to WrestleMania.
It was equal. I think it's fair to say that was just as good.
I swear to God, if they're referring to the length, that would be a killer.
Oh,
yeah.
So on SmackDown Tuesday night, I want to get your reaction to this, guys. SmackDown did 2,016,000 viewers, which, to put into context, they were down 2.7%. But their 6th lowest number of the year, which I found really surprising given no NBA, no NHL on Tuesday night. And you had Bill Goldberg's, they promoted the hell out of that thing on Monday and all throughout the show Tuesday. I thought Goldberg for 1 week was definitely going to spike a number, and it didn't. It was even less than the week prior. I was very surprised by this number.
Yeah, I'm pretty surprised by it too.
I don't know. I'm not. We see Goldberg a lot, it's not like, I don't know, and maybe I'm just old now, but I feel like we saw him not that long ago.
I suppose seeing the number that Brock did with the Money in the Bank, I feel like somebody who is seen less than Brock and Bill Goldberg might have appealed to the same audience, but maybe not. Maybe it tells you the lack of interest in this matchup between Taker and Goldberg, as maybe the audience really just seeing it as a match between two old people.
Maybe they should have promoted Bill cashing something in. That should have been.
Yeah.
What would he cash in?
Career? He didn't do that already? Was he not supposed to?
No, I don't think so. But they could always do that. They could do these career. I mean, really, they'll do the last time ever matches. Yeah. The last time you'll see Goldberg and Brock Lesnar together. Then they'll do the career.
Well, that's the question. Do you feel that there is more to do with Goldberg? Do you see them continuing this, or is this going to be?
I could see him coming
non-canon one-off, and this is it.
I could definitely see him coming back for more Saudi Arabia shows. I can even see Sean coming back for more Saudi Arabia shows.
That's what these shows are going to be.
Yeah,
it's going to be kind of like fantasy cards of guys that it's almost like they're not even connected to storyline. They'll do their requisite segment, which, I mean, you could argue Goldberg and Undertaker, that was the way to build it versus SummerSlam, where if they were to do this at SummerSlam, how would we build up this match for 2 months and get there? Versus just one segment each. Like, they don't view these shows as requiring all this television time to dedicate to it. But that's what these Saudi Arabia cards are going to be. I think it's any name they can figure out that is going to make some fan of the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s nostalgic. That's who they're going to go after. The thing is that they've really exhausted those names that I don't know how many more there are out there.
Do you think that's the aim? Like to kind of attract an audience, like the lapsed fan who was a fan from the Attitude Era, or is the aim more so to impress the people that are paying for this show?
Oh, that is it. It is the people that are spending all this money and saying, we want the guy in the cowboy hat.
Yeah.
And Jim Ross gets flown over there to do a kickoff panel.
Right? Yeah.
I think that's very much. And Yokozuna, if they could get Yokozuna, that would be a big get that they wanted, I believe.
How about Austin? Future name.
He's the natural name you would think of. I really don't rule out anything. Austin has been a guy that has turned down so much money over the years to come back.
This is a different level, though. Sean's been that guy too.
Well, that's it. I think Sean as well. I'm sure if you were one-on-one with Shawn Michaels and the last match of your career was that horrific tag match last year, that's probably not the for a guy that really did put a high price on the artistic side of professional wrestling that he viewed his career in. I'm sure that's not what he was looking at. But yeah, I think all those names are the ones that I'm sure, like, if they're making requests, Austin and Rock, I'm sure, are two of the first to come out and be requested.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure they've approached both of them. And I'm sure the number wasn't high enough. And then it's going to be a matter of, will they eventually get to the point where they have to?
I can't see The Rock doing it.
Yeah,
no, I think for many reasons, The Rock, it would not be just a smart move for his career to do. And certainly someone that, the paycheck is nice, but not a difference maker.
It's not president money.
Not president money. What else do we have here? NXT UK TakeOver. They've announced the venue will be at the Motorpoint Arena in Cardiff, Wales, August 31st, with tickets going on sale Friday. So this is going against the New Japan card at the Copper Box Arena in London, as well as the same day as All Out. There's also a huge rugby game going on that day. So when it comes to the scheduling of this show, I think it's rightly been kind of maligned here that this was kind of like a misread of the market to be choosing this day. At a time when New Japan has sold a lot of tickets for this show. So it's not like you're harming New Japan. They're good.
I've heard a lot of stories about this, about why WWE might have chosen this particular date. Perhaps they got word from an insider that they thought the New Japan sales were low, but then not realizing that they were also selling tickets through another venue and that they were actually doing really well. But
someone needs an observer subscription.
I look forward to hearing, our friends at the British Wrestling Experience talk more about, this. How do you think, from an international standpoint, the show will do on that day?
I think that timing wise, it's going to be I assume that the Royal Quest show, it's going to be interesting if that airs live on New Japan World, because some of the shows, like the ones they've done in Australia, they put them up on New Japan World after the fact. So if it's not airing live and you don't have it going head to head, like for me, myself, it's not that difficult that I could watch that show and then immediately it's going to end in time for the pre-show for All Out. So I don't think there's going to be crossover. It's a long day of wrestling.
We're used to that by now.
That's kind of every weekend now. So yeah. I don't see it playing a big significant factor for the worldwide audience. But I would say for someone that is in the UK, they're not traveling to this show when New Japan's an easier show to get to. Probably might be the better show, and it's a tough weekend to go to Wales if there's already big sporting competition that day.
They were about like 7 hours apart, 6 hours apart by car, and like in England that's like a world apart, maybe less, but still, like it is a sizable difference. And I think if there's one place that could kind of support that, certainly with the wrestling fan base, it's the UK right now, and I think it would almost be like different fan bases. Like I'm sure there's some people that are going to have to make a decision, but there's almost like the New Japan internet savvy fan base, and then there's like the WWE network version of that fan, which mind you, NXT's been having some incredible shows lately. So
I do find it interesting that like they would decide on this date in particular to either go up against. I mean, it seemed more like New Japan in that rather than AEW. You know,
Yeah.
No.
doing the
Paul
date.
Levesque said it had nothing to do with anything that's out there.
But I think it shows you maybe where their head is at as far as competition, and I think you're really ultimately looking at somebody in Triple H who thinks of competition as just being healthy. Overall.
Ultimately, like, I'm bringing up these points because I think if you have a destination event, I really don't think the date matters. Like, I feel if you have a hot event, if I don't think the date should matter, but NXT UK is not knocking them dead. So I will see what they build up for this show, but I don't see this being the hot show of the day, and it could very well be number 3.
I'd be more worried about the rugby being the draw because the rugby in Wales is huge.
It's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
I hear like, parking and like just tourism is going to be nuts already for
having
rugby.
been there during one of those big rugby matches there. It's like, it would be like being here during like an NBA final type thing. Like it's massive. So I'd be more worried about that. Than
Tomorrow's on sale is interesting. Like, if they have a week on sale date, in terms of tickets being moved the first day, you almost wonder, like, do they recognize this fact and move? We'll see. Maybe there's going to be a demand for this. Maybe, I don't know. Like, I'm not in that part of the world, but like NXT UK to me is like really under the radar, even if you're a WWE fan, like a big fan.
Well, I guess I will say internationally, I'm more aware now that this card even exists, though, because of the fact that it's taking place on the same day as these New Japan and also AEW shows. So in that sense, is that a benefit? I feel like I'm more aware of this show than I was about the last one.
Yeah.
The last show was a good show. I wouldn't say it was.
But it was not appointment viewing at all for anybody.
Yeah.
It was to me, it was like the first big show NXT UK did, and it was kind of like a polarizing main event. The Pete Dunne.
Did you realize
Joe
Pete
Coffey
Dunne
match.
and Walter had a match recently?
Yeah, he was on TV, and it kind of just
nobody talked about it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing: Goldberg versus Walter. That's gonna pop the ticket sales.
I don't think they'll ever do that. I don't see it.
That would be an amazing match.
Maybe Goldberg, Matt Riddle.
Matt Riddle. Well, Goldberg blocked Matt Riddle. I saw the other day on Riddle's Instagram.
Whoa, so they're doing it.
Yeah, it's built into something.
Right after we finished the double shot, New Japan, who constantly just screw us on their card announcements, announced the full Dominion card, and we've got it here. So we've got. Do you want to quickly go through this, Damian?
Sure.
I want to get some of your thoughts on this. So on top, well, let's go from the bottom. Actually, we got.
Wait, before you do that, John, I got some breaking news.
Oh, breaking news!
Jinder Mahal defeats R-Truth for the 24/7 title at an airport.
Oh, okay. I thought you said breaking news, not broken news.
Okay.
This also, and this is like, I know they've done the 24/7 title first, but doesn't this one feel like?
Did you say at the airport?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. On the way to Saudi Arabia, or maybe when they landed.
I don't know.
Okay.
Some of those places.
But like, doesn't it feel like this is like very similar to like the recent DDT hardcore title belt run that they did in America?
It's kind of the less creative version one.
That was a take on the.
I know, that's what I'm saying. They did it first. WWE did it first, obviously, but I think but
not nearly as creative.
No, it's not nearly as creative. And so maybe
this one, I mean, the roll ups, and I mean, underneath the ring, in a photo booth. I mean, there's been some really clever stuff.
I hope they give it to a cat too this time.
Okay, so we've got opening up the card on Sunday. Jon Moxley versus Shota Umino, which I love this as an opening match. I think this is going to be, I hope it's like 12, 13 minutes. Obviously, Moxley goes over, but I think Umino could really have a great outing with Moxley, who seems like he is just coming out of WWE, so motivated, changing up everything. I was so impressed with him on Wednesday's show.
Oh, like the moveset he was doing, like he looked like a different guy. Like it felt really like, this is like this is what we wanted.
It's really interesting matchmaking, I have to say, for a guy who just recently won a belt, a guy who just recently semi-main evented one of their shows. And you're seeing kind of Jon Moxley sort of in these like, he's like fighting guys with a lot of buzz, and that's not to say Shota Umino isn't, but you just wouldn't think to put him against a young lion. But that I think is what makes it so interesting. I
remember it wasn't this past year's Wrestle Kingdom, but the one prior when they did Jericho and Omega, and Jericho just nailed Umino right in front of his father. And I was thinking like it would be really cool for the next night at New Year's Dash to do 10 minutes of Jericho Umino, and they weren't going to do that. But I like that kind of thing. Like just to do, I think it's great for the young lion. Doesn't hurt him, ups his stock to be in there with a guy like Moxley. And I think that Umino, he's going to have way more attention on this because Moxley is like the hottest guy out there right now.
It is the type of match you would never, ever, ever see in the WWE. Somebody coming in as hot on the level of the Jon Moxley fighting essentially, like a performance center trainee. And that would never go on. But I think you and I talked about whether or not this would be a squash. I don't think it'll be a squash. I think it'll be like a lot of Young Lions matches, quite competitive, a great demonstration of fire from Umino, and probably a great back and forth. At least maybe like, I don't know, 10 minutes.
Yeah,
that's what I hope for, at least.
I think it also shows that he wants to do this, right? Like, I remember that was the whole thing. Is like, oh, is he going to walk away from wrestling when he walks away from the WWE?
He's more reinvigorated now than ever.
No, as much as we talked about like coming into the podcast, like the parallels you can draw with him and CM Punk, like has the complete opposite philosophies. Like, I didn't want to be there, but I like this guy loves pro wrestling, and it's just reinvigorated him just to be outside.
He got to visit the New Japan dojo. It just feels like he's just got a bucket list of like wrestling things he wants to do again.
Yeah, like I even like the comparisons between him and Jericho. Like I think, Jericho going over there, he was going to be the guy who's going over to the main event, and that's what he's going to do. Whereas Moxley seems to be just going over there to be a wrestler.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So then we have Shingo Takagi versus Satoshi Kojima. Again, I really like this matchmaking that Shingo Takagi, he called for a heavyweight. He's getting one that has credibility with the audience, someone you can sacrifice to Shingo. It's going to be great for Takagi. I'm looking at Takagi and Ospreay in the G1 now. I think that they're both going to end up in it.
Yeah. I find this one really interesting in that it's almost like the reverse of the Moxley Umino match, where you have, instead of somebody trying to make a name for himself in a new division, fighting a young line, he's fighting a veteran who's kind of on his way down. And I think it's a great use of Kojima. I think it'll be a really exciting, probably hard-hitting match where you get to see Shingo kind of demonstrate potentially a new style.
These last few days, like, I'm really stoked now for this year's G1. I think like you're gonna have a lot of fresh names in there. Like, I'm expecting Moxley now. I think if you add Shingo and Ospreay as first timers in the G1, you talk about a Brody King that I think is a real cool addition there. There's a lot. I think there's gonna be a lot of turnover this year in the G1, and we know Tama Tonga is not going to be in it this year, and I think you're going to get a loaded lineup, and we're probably going to get all the participants announced on Sunday.
It's for these reasons that I don't know if there's really a place for a guy like Kenny Omega, in the G1.
Yeah, we'll probably debate about this tomorrow, Damian, but we were discussing like any percentage chance of Kenny Omega being a wild card in the G1, given the fact that he's in a multi-year deal with AEW. This is the last summer he could do it, and if they're making a play for Omega, you'd want him for one of the Tokyo Dome shows, if not both. Would it be something like he would want to do one more G1 because he may not get to do another one?
I think
it's probably unlikely, but I don't say 100% on anything.
I don't think 100% on anything, especially in wrestling, but I think he's probably pretty content with the run he had in Japan. Like, I don't think he's got any unanswered questions for himself. And I think New Japan, like, the booking's better now than it's been in the last few years with him there. Like I think like now they're making new stars. Like, it feels like it's fresh again. Like, it really feels like it's, obviously that was like some of the best wrestling ever, but like, we knew those faces. We'd seen those faces for years at this point. And now
it's the upside of like when you do lose talent, if you're a really smart booker, to have that next wave. And then, we've lost Kenny, we've lost Cody, we've lost these guys, but man, in its place, we've locked down Kota Ibushi. We've introduced Ospreay as a heavyweight. We've got Shingo Takagi now in the mix, and we've elevated Jay White. And it's not overnight all the time, but here we are 6 months into the year, and New Japan, it's like, man, there's a lot of fresh faces and new rivalries that I think like your booking, like you should be solid for this year when it comes to new rivalries and setting something up. But those dome shows are very big ones to peak for.
Yeah, it really feels like every time they lose something, they're able to just be like, okay, well, we've got another piece ready.
So Kenny Omega benefited when AJ left.
Yep.
Then Jushin Liger, Yoshihashi versus Minoru Suzuki and Zack Sabre Jr., which I guess we're just going to continue to tease the Minoru Suzuki Jushin Liger program. Hiroshi Tanahashi, Juice Robinson, and Ryusuke Taguchi versus Jay White, Chase Owens, and Taiji Ishimori. And then we get into the title matches. Up first, Taichi defending the never open weight title against Tomohiro Ishii.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what type of match Ishii can get out of Taichi.
I think it's going to be pretty good.
How much fooling around Taichi's going to do before the match even begins.
I think they benefit going on at this place in the card and not any later.
Who do you think wins?
I think Ishii wins it back.
I think they've been like bouncing this title back and forth a little too much. You know, what's the belt gonna like?
This belt means nothing.
It means nothing. It means nothing to anybody. But I think in order for them to build some benefit to it, I think Taichi should keep it.
Did you want to?
Well, I like Japan. New Japan's like the best company that does goofy wrestler versus serious wrestler, and when they have those matches, it's always like really fun. And yeah.
IWGP Tag Titles: Guerrillas of Destiny defending against Evil and Sonata.
I've seen this match so many times.
I know. Yeah, it's and then the big three matches on the show. We have the junior heavyweight title, Dragon Lee versus Will Ospreay, which is insane that Ospreay is coming back 4 days removed from the Shingo Takagi Classic and is going to be expected to have another one with Dragon Lee. So it's I can definitely see Ospreay winning this for sure.
I can't see him losing, honestly. Like, you give him that much momentum coming off of Best of the Super Juniors and that match. He's got to keep this going.
And he goes into G1 as the champion, representing the junior heavyweight division.
You know, in that press conference, he talked about wanting to eventually main event Wrestle Kingdom as a junior heavyweight champion. And I don't know if that's really out of the realm of possibility for this year, considering they have 2 shows. Maybe the junior heavyweight title will be the headliner for that first show. And under Will Ospreay with the right opponent, imagine Hiromu coming back for that match. I think that might be able to headline.
One of the nights, yeah.
Yeah.
Then Intercontinental title, Kota Ibushi, Tetsuya Naito. This is their 3rd match this year. And I think you kind of, as solid as their matches have been, I think that this is you've kind of reached the end of this. And I think Ibushi should retain. I'm kind of cold on Naito at the moment. I mean, a lot of people were projecting him to be potentially the winner of the G1, and maybe he's going to have a tremendous tournament, but he to me has been pretty cold outside of some of these Ibushi matches. I don't feel it with him, and I don't think winning another IC title really does anything, and I think it damages Ibushi, who is a fresh name in that main event mix. So I'm looking at Ibushi retaining here.
I'm really not sure why this match is happening, other than the fact that, you know, it took place in America and it didn't take place in Japan.
It's a different universe.
I guess so.
It was like an alternate world.
I mean, I feel like I've already had my fill of it over the past year, and I certainly don't see anything.
Cass and Enzo are going to confront Ibushi after the match.
I certainly don't see Naito gaining a thing with it, so I don't think they'll be doing that.
And then the main event, Kazuchika Okada versus Chris Jericho for the IWGP Heavyweight title. Do you like this pairing, Damian? And is this a guarantee of Okada retaining?
Yeah, I think Okada's dead. There's no way there's no way Jericho. Well, I say that as I say it, you know, maybe it is possible, but I still think it's going to be Okada's belt. And I think eventually, I'm excited for this match, though. I think it's going to be an incredible match. I think Chris Jericho's New Japan run has been awesome. Like, I know a lot of people kind of like, oh, well, he can't wrestle like these guys do, but I think he does what he does best.
I think he's had some great matches.
Yeah, and he adapts.
Japan, and he's made a real big difference business-wise.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys that just knows how to adapt and knows how to like be that guy.
All right, let's head to the phone lines. We do have a caller calling in, and then we're going to get to our discussion about this week's edition of The Wrestlers. But caller, go ahead. You are on with Damian.
It's MJ from the streets of New York with the sounds in the background. How you guys doing? Damian, pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you,
listener,
too.
First-time caller.
I feel the same way, man. I hear your voice a lot on this show.
Wanted to... we talk about how negative like WWE has been lately, and it's really kind of reached a point where we're talking about it so poorly that we've lost sight of how positive the wrestling business, the wrestling industry is right now. Your conversation the last 20 minutes talking about New Japan and all the exciting things to come out of it, having all these other shows as options. Like, I think we should spend more time talking about how great that stuff is and less time like feeling bummed out about how shitty.
Well, we just did, MJ. What do you want?
No, I'm
there's so much great shit out there. It's not even hard to find. Like, there's so much great stuff I watch.
I think part of the problem is because, and again, I thank everybody for feeling so concerned for me after Monday. But it's the fact that predominantly our coverage is based around the WWE because that's what most people watch. We have a show dedicated to Raw. We have a show dedicated to SmackDown, and often when those 2 shows are bad, it it kind of makes us sound like we're negative on everything.
No,
when
I
that's not the case.
I want you to be miserable when you hate it. Don't bell curve this stuff.
No, I'm not bell curving it. I'm just saying, like, when we talk, like, covering the New Japan show yesterday, I think is the world of difference. Talking about AEW 2 weeks ago was a world of difference. You know, like, there's great wrestling is amazing out there as long
There's
as
a
you're not.
takeover card. That was one of the best cards this year.
Yes.
I mean, it's like, and that's the WWE product to me. It's all the same.
So, you know, we'll have to
Yeah.
we continue to talk about everything, but, you know, Mondays and Tuesdays it might just be a little bit rougher. That's all.
And the fact is, it's like WWE is going to be like, those are the shows that the most people are listening to. It's like Raw and SmackDown. That's always going to be what the most amount of people are going to want to hear from us.
That's true. I meant it as a compliment that, like, the last 20 minutes of you guys talking has been awesome.
I know. Just feed the ego, MJ. We never can hear enough.
This is the best time to be a wrestling fan ever. This is definitely the, you know, like, since I've been following it, which is the rock and wrestling era, this is the best time ever.
Let me just say, I'm amazed at, like, you know, because, like, you know, we've always talked to Damian and we've always had these conversations, you know, privately about like Damian's incredible enthusiasm for wrestling. The fact that you were able to turn that enthusiasm into, like, a TV show that's been as well received as the wrestlers is incredible. Really. Like,
I don't know how it happened.
He made a TV series out of all his favorite things happening in wrestling around the world.
And now I'm on the mailing list for every Viceland show, including my favorite, Bong Appetit.
Yes.
I get notifications about. I've told Damian, it's like, you're gonna, maybe you and I should review that.
There's gonna be an incredible
I can be the
crossover.
outsider.
No, there's gonna be a wrestlers crossover episode where I give you your
Bong
first dab.
Appetit.
Oh, we got some great titles. Anything else in your mind, MJ?
Yes.
Just kind of piggybacking on what you're saying, like, this time of being a wrestling fan. I've been watching the NBA Finals and, like, major props in Toronto and the whole country of Canada. Like, the footage the other night of
give us a week, MJ.
No.
The world will correct itself.
We worked really hard, MJ. I take full credit.
The reason I bring this up is because some of the talking points of, like, in the media following the NBA is that the storylines, it's not about what's happening on the court. It's about whether Durant and Leonard are going to stay. It's what's going on with who's missing, who's not. Like, it's off the course. The Lakers are, like, a big story of this finals, and they're not even playing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we're seeing in wrestling is, like, stuff like the Dean Ambrose podcast, stuff like where the next free agent's going to sign or what matches are going to potentially get booked now. Like, that is what's making this time of being a fan so interesting to me, is that you have things to look forward to that don't even take place in the ring, much less, like, the in-ring product being as good as ever in these key places, New Japan, AEW, NXT. And I think it's just, again, like, I repeat myself, but we're not focusing as much on how awesome all that is. You guys just did. I'm listening to other podcasts too. Like, they're starting to talk about other aspects of the industry. I think, like, broadly, people are getting sick of just being negative all the time. And there's a lot of good going on. I wanted to be positive for once.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting point as well that you have now in AEW and New Japan as well, that it was something that's kind of been lost about, like, a talent, like, on their own decisions to be able to now show up somewhere. And it's like, you get, like, a reset. It's, what is John Moxley going to look like? What's his gear going to look like? What's his match style going to look like? And it's not the case of a guy that got fired and he's going somewhere else. It's, you know, it's that jumping nature that the WWE has failed to be able to recreate with the shakeup, but we get the legitimate version now. And I think that's, like, an exciting part of wrestling to a lot of fans, is to see a character you're deeply familiar with, and now you're putting them into a whole new world and seeing new matches, a new look, and it's a true reset. And that's, like, a fun part of wrestling for many people, seeing new matches, and it's a refresh.
I think it's always, like, you know, look at the Attitude Era. The Attitude Era wasn't great because of the in-ring product. Like, I think your reviews for years on Review Away really drove that point home to me. I think it was amazing because of the meta community stuff that was happening around it, that you'd be following, like, is this guy going to show up here? What's going to happen? And it was like a time when we brought the outside world into the world of wrestling as fans, and, like, you know, and the companies then reacted to it and made it part of the storylines. That happened again with the CM Punk pipe bomb, and now it's happening with the John Moxley stuff. And we really feel like it feels like there's this sort of, like, excitement out of wrestling that has, you know, something to do with what's happening in the ring, but also has something to do with just sort of, like, the excitement of community.
The difference with the pipe bomb, though, is that there really was no alternative. What you were seeing was a rebellious voice within the system that really had no place to go. I mean, for Punk, the place to go was UFC. But now you can actually, you know, we'll see what happens, but it really feels like there's a place for those disenfranchised people to go to. Thank you for the call, MJ. Let's go to Hansi. What's up?
Yo, what's going on, guys?
Hey, Hansi, you're on the line with Damian as well.
I want to ask Damian real quick because Viceland doesn't come on Rogers anymore, right?
No, it doesn't.
And I'm just wondering, is there a way I can if I watch on the website? Is there a way? I kind of do want to see the document. I see the trailers for it, and I feel bad that I haven't watched it yet, and I just don't know how to get a hold of that.
Are you asking one of the show's creators how to pirate his own show? Is that what you're trying to be polite and ask, Hansi?
No. I heard Vice lets you play it on their website. Is that true? I haven't checked though, but can you do that?
They do, but they geo-block it, unfortunately, for Canada. It's going to be coming out later on in Canada. There is going to be a release date for it properly here. There are ways to watch it right now. None that I can recommend, unfortunately, but there are definitely ways to watch it right now.
Okay, that's cool. I got two questions and I hope all you guys can answer this. The first one being, do you guys see with the Saudi Arabia show coming up again, right? Do you foresee, because the only person who seems in the mainstream to even touch this is John Oliver. Do you think, because he does like shows where they touch upon something that he did before, do you think with this Saudi Arabia show and even with the whole Ashley Mazzaro controversy, do you think he will touch upon this again, or do you think it's going to be a dead issue again?
I could see him doing another wrestling story, but he's about the only one I could really see.
I could see it being a little early. I mean, I certainly see like somebody like Hassan Minaj on Netflix doing something.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I do feel like maybe it's a little bit too soon and that not much new has developed for them to do an update on it. Maybe, by the time the next show comes around, perhaps.
It's also like, I remember like kind of looking at kind of like what last week tonight, like what their viewership is like in that particular week. It's not like that was one that like, it was like this giant explosion of viewership for a wrestling themed story. And I'm sure that is, it's an element to look at, but I don't know. Like the thing with that show is that they will take some very like non-sexy topics and try to present them in a really entertaining way. So I don't even know if the subject matter is necessarily going to scare them off or anything, but you're right. It was only March that they did that story. I don't know if they're going to revisit another significant portion to more wrestling topics.
It's kind of part of the frustration of the fact that that this deal is 10 years long. I feel like, and I think with the WWE kind of being so steadfast in like wanting to continue with it, I worry that there's going to be just a feeling of like helplessness and that, audiences and even critics might eventually just kind of tire of it and give up, realizing that they're not really going to change anything.
Well, also probably WWE is looking at them disappearing a journalist and is like, are we going to back out of this deal and risk that? Like they can make you disappear. Like we don't want any of this headache.
Well, that was, I mean, the story with like, WME, and they were set to get like a $400 million like buy-in by in Saudi Arabia. And you had Ari Emanuel pretty much like nullify the deal and apparently had like protection around him. But like, here's a guy, like as much as you can say about like a business deal, like here was someone who really took a major stand. And this was like an enormous amount of money that they were returning and canceling a deal over, which is not something that's very easy to do. And you could probably just like the WWE's response was, hey, it's a business deal and we have to honor the deal. Here was someone like they were trying to buy like an ownership stake in, and they were able to nullify that. So I think like that speaks volumes right there of what the UFC's parent company did. And
just back to what you're saying about John Oliver, it probably didn't move the needle as far as ratings went, but I guarantee you that segment has been shared more online than any of their average.
And with
segments.
HBO too, I mean, it's much more contingent on subscribers versus just simply viewers.
Yeah. And I think that I think right now, and I've known this forever. You've known this forever. We used to talk about this when you were still with Fight, like wrestling moves the needle. Like wrestling, when I would have wrestling on Much Music, we would get better ratings.
What they told me in Way at the
end.
I
know exactly. They don't get it. They didn't get it. And now I think because of Dark Side, because of
that's not true, because they ended up buying a wrestling company.
They ended up buying it. You're right. They did get it. They just didn't get what you guys are saying, but that was to their detriment. But I think that because like wrestling moves the needle. So I think John Oliver, they'll probably do another wrestling story sooner rather than later. I think Linda McMahon working for the Trump re-election campaign could be something they want to talk about, because that's the story people are saying now. So
Yeah, I've definitely sensed like there's a lot less kind of focus on this show that's coming up Friday as compared, and I didn't expect it to be the same as the November show because that was just such a lightning rod of controversy that they were riding, deciding to go ahead with that show in the way in which they did. So like exactly a month removed from the murder.
Thank you for the call. Okay.
Wait, just one more question quickly. I want to get your guys' take on this. What one podcast would you guys be? Because after this whole Moxley thing and this whole Punk thing, right? Which for each of you guys, which one guy or girl are you looking forward to after they leave WWE to do kind of like what Moxley podcast is? Like
Sami
which one
Zayn.
of you guys? Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. Okay, cool. Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
I thought he was going to ask, what podcast would you like to see John Moxley do next? I thought that was a good question. And I was going to say OSW review. That's what I would guess.
I want to hear him on Bella Brains.
Oh, man. Could you imagine that? Moxley's Mind. With Renee Young as the host.
Oh, yes.
Renee Paquette, maybe for that episode. Or Renee Good, I guess is what she goes by now.
Yeah.
Let's chat about this episode as we were not expecting to go 50 minutes deep here before we got into this. You've got to go very soon, so let's quickly chat about the Stardom episode. And
we can go long.
Well, this was like a really fascinating episode because you're talking about a lot of people that I would say 95% of the people listening to this know these names by name and in-ring abilities only, specifically Mayu Iwatani, who when I first saw this episode, when it like fell out of the sky off a satellite signal and aired on my TV a year and a half ago, I was blown away by this because it's the backstory of Mayu Iwatani that I never knew anything about, like no inkling about this. And it's just interesting, like just her like hesitancy to even talk about it, about something happened in my teenage years that involved the police. And I became a recluse over it and clearly had like psychological issues from it that led to her running away from home, not talking to her parents as she set off to become a professional wrestler. Like what, so much to unpack like with this woman.
No, it was incredible how open she was. And it was really hard to talk to her. She didn't really want to do interviews with us. Like we tried to get her several times to kind of sit down and talk. We had pre-interviewed her, so we knew she wanted to do the interview, but just when it came time to actually talk, she wasn't that interested. I think that's why she's such an amazing ace for that company to now have, because she is so reluctant to be in that role. Like she really doesn't, seems like someone who would have been very content just to be able to wrestle because she loves that. That's, she's one of the best in the world.
Yeah. I really question like like loyalty being such like a dominant trait in specifically in Japanese culture. If a WWE came calling, I don't know, like she seems like she is very indebted to Rossy Ogawa.
Definitely.
And I don't know if that would be such an easy decision for her to make.
Yeah. And I think also like, her having to step up speaks volumes to that, because I think the reason she has stepped up and the reason she's dealing with, like every time she went out before those matches, you see her backstage, we were shooting with her backstage. She looks terrified about, not wrestling, but I think it's just being in that spot, being that person out there every time, every show. But the company was in a reeling, Ayu Shirai had left, Kerry Hojo had left. So there was like a real gulf that she had to step in and fill. Ayu had came back by the time we were there because she had that injury, but it was pretty clear that this was just going to be a temporary kind of return.
Did you intend on interviewing her, or was it always Mayu?
We tried to. Well, she wasn't involved in the picture when she'd gone the first time to WWE at that point, and so she was not in the picture. So we were like, Mayu was the person we wanted to talk to. By the time we got to Japan, she had come back, but it was very clear that it was just going to be a temporary stay. And I don't know. We wanted to talk to her, but it just was never made an available option.
I thought you guys did a great job of, maybe talking about the fan culture of a company like Stardom and how different it may be from a New Japan, or, next week you'll be talking about deathmatch wrestling in Japan and how different those cultures may be. And specifically, you mentioning that it was predominantly male audience. In fact, Chris Wolf saying it was something like 90-95.
Yeah.
I just want to say I feel so bad for Todd Martin, because he was actually at the show, and like he was like the first, like he was in the first shot that you see after like they talk about that. I'm like, Todd, like poor guy goes to Japan like one time and gets caught in this like scene of like,
well, I would have been one of those guys too,
yes,
right?
Yes. And I will be one of those guys
Yeah.
when I go to Japan. I can't wait to see Stardom. But you kind of also honed in on like the idea that maybe it was a little bit weird that they have a 14-year-old wrestler that like men are paying money to take pictures of and buying autographs of like scantily clad performers in. Did you kind of gain new perspective on that? How do you feel about that now?
I definitely, it feels a lot more innocent there, and if you go to a lot of big American all women indies as well, the audience is different than you'd expect too, right? Like I kind of, I guess, envisioned sort of like a all Japan women's 80s, 90s audience, which was a lot of young girls, like I kind of thought that's what it was going to be like, the sort of like teen idol kind of.
And they had like the end date. Like once you reach a certain age, you're done.
You're done. But it was also like the product was definitely appealing to young women. And I think the wrestling is the exact same. The culture is the exact same, but the audience changed, and I'd be fascinated to kind of like, I'm not an expert in the history of Joshi by any stretch of the imagination, but I'd be fascinated to try and pinpoint that moment where it went, because it was originally all men when it was like trying to be pitched as sort of like this sort of like strip show, sideshow kind of thing. And then it shifted to women in the 70s and 80s and into the 90s. And then it shifted back because now, like, Chris Wolf, I think, was being generous with 95% men. I would say like 97%, 99%.
Right. Yeah, and it was really interesting to hear her talking at the time with you, and this was around 2017.
Yeah,
and talking about, I don't know if this is what I want to do, because I want to do everything, but I put so much work into this, it'd be hard to really just start from scratch. And we fast forward, she had her retirement match not all that long ago, and was concerns with like concussions, and has now moved on, and we'll see if she ever comes back to wrestling, but now taking that step away to whatever is next on her agenda.
Yeah, she was someone really cool to meet, because you're meeting a lot of these people that got into it as young people. They were training at 14, they were fans, they got, their parents were fans, they were raised with this. She got into it knowing nothing about it. Like she makes it pretty clear that her knowledge of American wrestling was fairly limited at the time. And so her knowledge of Japanese wrestling was non-existent.
I find it actually very similar to like, experiencing like through training with jiu-jitsu, a lot of people training jiu-jitsu, in particular, like women training jiu-jitsu, that really like had never seen the UFC before. It was just kind of like something that seemed fun to do. And you look at what wrestling is, and it definitely makes sense, like colorful costumes, just being able to kind of like exert a level of energy and a level of like physicality that I guess women traditionally aren't really expected to. I could see that appeal. I thought the show also did a great job of like talking about some really broad Japanese concepts that I really didn't expect to be brought up,
like kawaii
culture, and also the senpai kohai system in Japan, which is essentially kind of their master and student system that they have all throughout their society.
Yeah, no, it really, and once again, hats off to Jeff and Nathan. Like these were things that kept coming up, and like when you're around wrestling, you take some of this stuff for granted. When you're around this, Japanese culture as like an outside observer, you begin to take some of the stuff for granted that you just know it. But then when you actually have to kind of try and explain it to someone, you're like, oh, we need to kind of get into this a little bit more, and I needed to learn how to say it.
How sensitive did you detect anyone you spoke with, specifically Ogawa, regarding the Yasukawa and Yoshiko incident from 2015? And if you want to just quickly provide the Cole's notes of what that was.
Yeah, that was an incident that happened in Japan where there's still like a lot of speculation about why it really happened. No one really knows. Some people have think it was a senpai kohai situation where someone was stepping out of rank,
and Yoshiko just like brutalizes
Act. Yeah, like Act. Why would you want to watch it? I don't know, but if you do want to watch it, it is on YouTube. It's a very long, really hard watch. Like I think it's probably the hardest wrestling match to watch, and like we've all done the deep dives on the YouTube wrestling matches that turned into shoot fight things, and this is one of the ones that I really struggle to watch every time.
To put it in perspective, like Act suffers like a broken cheek, broken orbital bone,
ended up retiring.
Yeah, she was just completely messed up from this incident.
Yeah, and she's still around Stardom. Like she does come around Stardom once in a while. She's like a manager.
To wrestle?
Yeah, no, just more like manager type role, out of ring kind of role. But she is still around Stardom. It was something that I definitely was really interested in trying to figure out about. It was like something that we were kind of like, every time we brought it up, it was like, no, don't bring it up. And then we didn't even bring it up to
who told you not to bring it up.
We had like conversations in the beginning with different people in the office that were
Okay.
like, yeah, just don't. And so we're like, okay, well, like, you know, like this isn't the direction the documentary is going to go. Then we clearly will take it another way. But then,
It's interesting. It kind of bleeds into like what you were talking about, like with these women that are presented as these women without flaws, that are presented as like very much like these models of perfection. And I think very much the company wants to be presented in the exact same way. And this is like a blemish on their history, and a very public one.
Absolutely. And it's also, I think it's a perfect analogy for like the two streams of Joshi wrestling, which combine, which is sort of this sort of like, you know, stage, screen, Stardom, idol thing, which Act embodied, and Yoshiko was the brutality.
Yeah, like the gay girls documentary type of like, you know, like traditional Japanese hard training type of thing.
Yeah.
So how did you end up like being able to?
He brought it up.
Oh, okay.
We didn't bring it up at all.
Oh,
we got to this place and we saw that he had a photo on the wall, and we're like, that's very interesting. And then he actually brought it up to us.
Wow.
We didn't bring it up.
Yeah.
And we were like, you know, we're grateful that he did. And I think it is obviously a blemish because someone's career was ended, but at the same time, it also is a huge part of their history and represents a huge moment in their history. But I can understand why they want to steer away from it. But at the same time, I think it is part of the history that, you know, needed to be kind of acknowledged in some way, because it was a shift in the culture in that place.
Because again, next to this of like, it basically shifted the roster.
Yeah, totally shifted the roster, and also shifted just the way what the company decided to be, you know, and the company's constantly shifting. Like I think Ogawa-san comes off as like a little cold. Like people have come to me and said that.
I mean, you have Chris Wolf saying, you know, I don't know how much he cares for me as a person. He's more of a businessman.
Yeah.
And the fact that like he's so kind of brutally like honest about one of the wrestlers at the end about his critique of her on camera, seems to suggest he's one of those types of guys.
Yeah, he's definitely pretty brutal in his critiques and pretty honest. But I think that's because he loves the wrestling business more than just about anyone I've ever met. And he views it as a business, definitely, but he loves it. Like he was telling us stories about picking up Mil Mascaras from the airport and driving him around, and just how honored he was to get to do that. And just like going through his lucha collection and telling us like, you know, we're talking about going to Totocon and buying just like, oh yeah, I bought this for, you know, all this money. And he lives in this tiny apartment. It's not like he's a baller just deciding to throw his money into this thing. Like this is his life. Like he loves this so much. And his house is just full with Stardom. It was amazing going to, you know, Gabe's house, and there's nothing about wrestling in it, like nothing at all. And then you go to Ogawa's house and it's just everywhere. It's just consuming you.
I'm almost like wishing like Viceland would have like that at the end of the series, like the reunion show where you have like all these figures on stage together.
A round table?
Jun Kasai, Gabe Sapolsky, Rossi Ogawa, and then you're the moderator.
That would be amazing. Well, Starcast, Conrad, if you're listening, we got a panel. We got a panel.
Fighting Cholitas like in one end.
I hope one day to have a match with all of them. There's like a card with everyone all mixed together.
I hope so too. I know you had kind of talked about
the dream. Well, maybe one day.
How did you feel at the end? Because you kind of voiced kind of your concerns about like kind of the objectification of a lot of these women that are kind of put on display, and getting like an awkward vibe from this. Did that change at all after this experience speaking with the women? I myself, like, I found it really difficult to hear from Azumi, and you know, the criticism, not even criticism, but the expectation level she'll get from fans that believe like you must have an outstanding performance, and the level of expectation, like it's not even typical Twitter criticism. It's just this pressure that is put on some of these women, and some that are at an age where that should not be anything that they're concerned about, and it's more public than ever now with something like Twitter, for instance.
Yeah, definitely. I found it like, you know, even at the end, like I didn't walk away from it being like, well, I'm cool with this now, because you know, their bodies are going to be broken. Like Chris Wolf is illustrative of that, and like the fact that most of these people, you know, they did have an age limit in All Japan Pro Wrestling, but from what I heard from a lot of these wrestlers, there's also like an age limit now, because your body's just going to be broken down. Like Fuka, she's now just the host because she can't wrestle anymore. Her body's just not up for it, she said.
Well, I wondered, like, if there's a maximum age limit, should there be a minimum age limit?
Yeah, I think so too. But then like, you know, it's weird, and it's kind of uncomfortable because we don't see it in North American wrestling, but it's certainly no weirder and no more uncomfortable making than like little kid beauty pageants and things like that. Like we do a lot of things in cultures around the world to our children in the name of entertainment that aren't necessarily the most positive things. Like,
now, is it entertainment though, or is it just simply somebody following their passion? I mean, I'm not talking about beauty
Yeah.
pageants, but like, a kid wants to take up skateboarding, they could take up skateboarding. But for this kid, it happens to be professional wrestling.
yeah.
And,
like,
and taking bumps too. Like what kind of impact, like the trauma you're delivering to your body from 14 to 19, that is that going to be something that, like, look at Paige, for instance. I mean, here she is retired at this very young age, and someone that started it at such an early age.
Then look at guys like Rey Mysterio, though. All these other guys that are able to train from the young age to become the persons that they are.
Or Joey Janela, like people that we celebrate because they started training at 16. Like I think 14 is younger than 16. I will definitely admit that, but I think at the same time,
that's a fact.
Yeah. It's an inarguable fact, but at the same time, I think, like, I don't know. I didn't feel better about it, but it's also just such a part of Joshi at this point. Like there's, it's been going on forever. These young kids, like, was it the Crush Girls after they had that huge year? They had 2,000 applications from young women to become pro wrestlers or something. So it's like this call that certain kids in Japan hear.
What do you think is the future of Joshi pro wrestling in North America specifically? Because I think AEW with Double or Nothing, you see Kenny Omega putting that show on, and I think, in my opinion, like being one of the matches that stole the show, do you see this product being able to directly translate to North American audiences? Stardom did a show recently in WrestleMania weekend.
It would be interesting to see how it translates. Like I think there's certain stuff that wouldn't translate. Like I think which are key parts of Stardom, which the audience really wants. Like I don't think the wrestlers want to do the song and dance numbers, but
I'd love to see that. Are you kidding me?
The audience loves it. Yeah, the crowd loves it, and I think it'd be interesting to see how it would translate, like those elements of the show too. I'm also fascinated what's going to happen now that if it does become popular in America, how that affects its popularity in Japan, because it was not as popular as I would have thought it would have been. Like in these. For how good the wrestling is and for how amazing that show is, I wanted Korakuen Hall to be sold out to maximum capacity.
What was capacity?
It was, I don't know. It was definitely, they didn't have the backstage open, like, the stage on the hard camera side, and they didn't have the,
because that's like an 1,800 venue.
Yeah. They can like open it up to different things. It was definitely packed for what it was. Like, where just the back half was open and the panels, you can see in the episode, it looks fairly full. But yeah, like it just, that last wrestling match is one of the best wrestling matches I've ever seen in my life. Like just like the level of brutality, just like when Mayu's being like hung over the entranceway, it's just everything about that match was fantastic. And it just, like I hope it gets more popular in Japan. Like I really would love to see it get back to that stage where they're able to sell out stadiums with it.
Next week, you're going to be doing the deathmatch episode.
Yes.
So this is airing, of course, the wrestlers Wednesday nights, 10 Eastern on Viceland. Yes, this is
staying in Japan.
Yeah, you will be in Japan for a portion of this with a big interview.
A big interview. Yeah, there's some amazing guests on this one. This is, I don't know. I think this might be my favorite. If I like the Congo one, which is coming up, that's probably the favorite. But this one is just something about getting to meet the people I got to meet. This is the one that I was like grinning ear to ear throughout the whole thing. And I'm not even the biggest deathmatch fan.
Probably like the most most prominent interview I've ever seen with Onita that's like translated to English.
Yeah, like it was, and it's weird because like that to me is the Ric Flair of Japan, like, or maybe Ric Flair is the Onita of America. Like the stories you hear about this guy are just out of control, and just he's got that presence. Like that's a rock star.
He's really intriguing in it, but to me, the star of next week's episode is Jun Kasai, which we'll chat about next week when you're on the show. But it's an episode I definitely recommend if you've been enjoying the series so far.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about it with you guys. Oh, I can't wait to make you guys watch this violence.
Well, Damian has a flight to catch. He is off to Portugal. So I want to thank you for stopping by the Café Hangout. It's always great to catch up with you, Mr. Abraham.
It's an honor anytime I get to come by. And the cafe is just right around the corner from my house. So anytime you want to come to the Vape Lounge, let me know.
The door is always open, except for right now when it is technically closed. But we will be back on Friday with our Super ShowDown review. We're going to be joined by a number of guests, including Will Cooling and Kareem Zidane. And this one, everyone will be able to not only listen to, but also watch.
Yeah, and we want to do this especially just because we want to hear from you guys. We're not really leaving that much room for guests, but maybe more so room for phone calls from people who not only want to talk about the show, of course, but everything going on with the WWE's deal.
Heavy caller show.
yeah, so that's on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/postwrestling. Subscribe there as well. You can listen to it afterwards.
And then coming up this weekend, we've got 2 new editions of Cruel Summer with WH Park. He's going to be chatting the 1993 G1 final on Saturday morning, and then the 94 final on Sunday morning. And then we have a UFC post show on Saturday night with myself and Phil Chair Talk. And then Sunday night for patrons, Wai and I will be back reviewing Dominion. Damian, I hope you tune in.
I can't wait, guys. I'm going to be listening to you guys on the planes.
So go check out postwrestling.com, postwrestlingcafe.com. Tune into the Wrestlers Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern on Viceland. Anything else, Damian, that you got cooking for us?
Find me on @LeftForDamian and check out Turn Out a Punk this week because I got Wikiface Springs Eternal.
From the Cro-Mags?
No, from the Goth Boy Clique, one of the inventors of Emo Trap. Actually, the pioneer of Emo Trap.
I think you should have someone from the Cro-Mags on.
Massive Evolve fan. More of an Evolve fan than anyone in the Cro-Mags is. Definitely a huge Evolve fan. Huge Darby Allin fan. Just did a Darby Allin collaborative shirt. So I bring it full circle to wrestling, John. I'm not going to leave you out there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Damian. That is it for us, and we will speak with you all on Friday.